What a day.
Same here. You ready?
Please.
That's how you could spend some Saturday night.
Oh my God, I do throw the best Saturday night parties ever.
Editing
with
out
my
fart sounds.
3 cats and a Foley board of grossly inappropriate sounds.
So I should be on my best behavior. Never cross you, else my...
It's kind of like that philosophy of actors need to be kind to the costume designer or they'll show up on stage with one glove. You need to be really nice to your post-production team or they'll make you look like hell.
You know, did you see the basket of brownies I brought for you downstairs?
I have a rider that demands no brown M&Ms. We're rolling. We're on the set of Anna in the Tropics.
Yes.
Well, the beginnings of the
I'll
set.
be Anna.
Yeah, okay. No. No, it's actually, there is something to be said for recording in an active theater where they have a season going on.
Yeah.
Because it's like...
Ever changing.
Yeah, totally. And there's that energy of a show that's starting to come together. So we're aware that our set is changing and we're embracing it fully. In fact, we'd love to eventually take this on the road and come to your theater where we can show your process while we talk about strange and true things.
That's it.
So,
and in the meantime, we're keeping our shoes on because we never know where there will be a rogue screw or nail.
I was thinking about the fact that with the table right here, no one knows what's happening below the waist.
That's right.
None of this is making the episode. Or maybe it will. I don't know. The last time we were recording, I talked about how some of my best content happened before the takes would start, so they would just start rolling the camera on me. But for this episode, we have sort of, when we were brainstorming content that we wanted to do for the show, we kind of just started throwing ideas against a wall just to see what would stick and what really intrigued us. And we were talking before we started rolling. We're like, the theme of this episode really sort of fit together in a way I don't think we totally intended when we started. Mm-hmm. The 2 shows that we're going to be focusing on today, Juliana is going to take us through one of my personal favorites, Ragtime. And then I'm going to go dark and Sondheimian, is that a word? Now
Sure.
It is. Assassins. So we've got a lot of really fun content to get into on this. So I'm going to let you start. Ragtime.
With Ragtime. And I feel like a disclaimer has to be made that this is such an epic novel. Mm-hmm. And the adaptation to film and to the Broadway stage is... so grand that we could do an entire season on this. So, Ragtime was a book. Is a book. It still exists.
Amazing.
Even today.
I am stunned. Books still happen in 18 now?
That's it. All right. It's written by a man called E.L. Doctorow. E.L. Edgar Lawrence. He was named for Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and there's some kind of fun anecdotal stuff about him talking to his mom, saying, "Did you know that you named me after this, like, alcoholic, narcissistic,
Mom, what signals are you
author?"
sending
And
me?
she's like, "Stop being funny." Well, he was born in 1931 in the Bronx. His parents were children of Russian Jewish immigrants. So he's like second generation. And he spent 2 years in the Army. When he came back, he got married and he worked a lot of odd jobs. Now, this is where, as an artist, I'm super inspired because he's working really hard at jobs that aren't making a huge impact. However, he's building up this education that is so unique for what he's going to need in his life as a writer later on. Yeah. So some of his jobs included reading novels for CBS television and writing the synopses for them.
Okay.
And he said he got to a point where it was 7 days a week. He was reading 1 book a day.
Wow.
And reading that. So can you imagine, like, over the weeks and months and years of doing that?
The internet has ruined us as book readers, as a society, truly.
But I mean, what better education for a writer can you possibly get?
Absolutely.
So he's working in these publishing companies. He's not doing, he's not being hired as a writer or an artist per se, but he's really working his way up in his day job. Yeah. More or less.
Isn't it nice when your day job can complement what you want to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not asking how many fries would you like with that? Nobody asks how many. Well, I do.
How many fries would you like to have?
Probably why I'm not working in food service.
The worst
5
question. Or can you imagine if someone requested, I would like 23 French fries? Or certain how many grams they are.
24. So sorry.
And most, like Ragtime, most of his books are historical fiction. In fact, all of them except his very last one, which was sci-fi, use this technique of intertwining historical events, historical characters with fiction. Right. To varying degrees. He eventually moved to New Rochelle, New York, into the house that was modeled for the one described in the pages of Ragtime. Nice. It was written in 1975. Now today, historical fiction and period pieces on our streaming networks or whatever, they're popular. It's a big deal. A lot of people love them. But in the mid-70s, historical fiction wasn't a hugely successful genre. I mean, we've always had the crime, the true crime and the murder mysteries and the romance novels, but historical fiction wasn't always taken really seriously. And there's a competition between what was thought of as popular literature and artistic literature. And you usually either fell into one or the other bucket.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so how we have our 50 Shades of Grey versus our more, erudite Michael Faber novels, where you're really thinking. But Ragtime became a bestseller as a hardback, which is kind of a fun, interesting fact that I never thought about it.
No, well, because a lot of times when you get it into the paperback edition, it's more affordable.
It's cheaper.
Yeah. So it's more accessible, I guess, is the way to put it. But it became a bestseller as a hardcover. So that says a lot.
Yeah. In fact, I think one source I read said that in 1976, most houses had a copy of Ragtime in their home.
I could totally see that though, because the broader themes of the book. I mean, everybody's an immigrant, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of shared experience there, or a lot of interest in how we got to where we are now. And I think that's, for me, what it's always made it so deeply intriguing as a piece of literature, because it talks about these not stealing all your notes, but how these life experiences intertwine and really make a piece.
It reminds me quite a bit of the technique used in Forrest Gump.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
To tell the story of a generation through these famous events and popular figures.
And brushes with people who you know and recognize and go, oh yeah, so that grounds us in that era.
Correct.
But we're, when Mother's younger brother bumps into Emma Goldman, it sort of grounds that. It grounds it in the era, but you're not so much like, oh, let me see what Emma's doing. You're still you're invested in the family at this point. So yeah.
That's it, yeah. Yeah, it's maybe how we would use memes today to tell. That's right. I'm like, oh, that was so 2007.
What I do, what my friends think I do.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. That's right. Or yeah. I want to talk for a second about the choice in naming the book Ragtime.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, because we think of Ragtime as being an era, but it's also a musical genre, right?
True.
And so coming from a musician, Ragtime is extremely significant in American music's place in world music. Ragtime is the OG jazz. Okay? Ragtime starts 3 years from the turn of the century, 1900. So it's really becomes, we think of the start of Ragtime as happening 1897, going to 1917, important year in the world.
Major, yeah.
After 1917, we call that genre of music jazz.
Yes.
Okay, so it is very similar also in what hip hop is to us today, and what hip hop was like the hip hop, a hippity hop, like a razzmatazz, like how that was in the early 90s, and where it is today.
Right.
And that we can see that evolution there. That's what happened to Ragtime into jazz, into dance, like big band and swing and rock and roll, and an argument could be made that there is a very clear line in what's happening in popular music. what ragtime did musically. Can we geek out to the music for just a second on the music?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So ragtime was popularized on the piano. That also helped it become more popular because every bar can afford a piano, right? Maybe not a band. Every home, in upper middle class, is going to have a keyboard instrument in it. It's cultural. Yes, right. It's not that hard to get your hands on a piano.
It's also a really good bass instrument for teaching your children how to play the musique. So, so having a piano in the home, a pianoforte was considered a cultural investment.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it was definitely considered like part of becoming a well-rounded person, and for like women who are like school schmool, but you're gonna have piano lessons, right?
Yeah. Oh no, totally, because then you're usable to the family. After dinner, the wife will play the piano while the husband holds court with the stogie and his men from work. And what? Sorry, women's college, go.
Okay, so ragtime's popularized on the piano. So let's think of this specifically from a piano's perspective. In your left hand, you've got bass chord, boom, cha. Boom. This is pa, pa. Ragtime starts off as a march, straight out of John Philip Sousa.
Yep.
Pa, 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 pa. Everyone's used to hearing that. I say John Philip Sousa very specifically because when we think of him, we think of military march, and we think of white, middle-class Americans.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So what's happening to white middle-class Americans in this era? Well, we have just finished the Civil War. Well, not finished, right? The fighting is ended.
Yeah, we're coming out the back end of that.
Right.
And
this is the Reconstruction era.
And we are not quite to civil rights yet. We're in a land of We're in a middle ground where things are definitely starting to happen, but it's going to take more social evolution to even approach the big change points that we think of as we hit the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, so we have a lot, and there were 94 years to go.
There's so much unrest. Mm-hmm. But there is this veneer of pa. We got this. We are all on the same. We're all on the same path, and this is great. We're coming together. We're doing our thing. It's Gilded Age. We've got railroad. We've got oil. We're
doing good. Look at us. Yeah.
And also, it is important that in this era, the money of most Americans is being filtered out into the banks and military.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea of having a march as the basis of your popular music is exactly what we would expect it to be.
Well-regulated life.
Well-regulated life. But then what do we have on the top of that? What's happening in the right hand is syncopation. Okay. Which is from the devil. Just kidding.
Well, it is. There is that whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because it makes you want to dance.
And that can lead to things and touching other people in places.
Yeah, well, yes. So Scott Joplin we think of as like the big daddy of ragtime music. Mm-hmm. He is writing classical music. Very similar to what we think of as Gershwin, like Rhapsody in Blue and things like that. It is legit classical music, but in a popularized form that makes it easier to swallow. So he starts, making our name in world music. All of a sudden, there is an American popular music.
That is very distinct. Until then, you looked to Europe for your styles.
That's right.
In not just music, but you looked to Europe. It was getting our own identity as a nation.
Pre-1897, all over the U.S., there are this style is bubbling of the march style with the overlay of the syncopation. Some music historians think it is because of one instrument, the banjo, that this style of music came straight from a slave culture who played the banjo, and banjo's got that fifth string, and so when you're plucking it, you have that plink a plink a plink a plink a plink. It almost has to become syncopated. So that when in these plantations that were owned by mostly Scotch-Irish people, you would have their jigs, put the banjo over that, and then you have almost a rag already because of the syncopation.
Totally, yeah.
one other thing that's interesting about it, harmonically, you have, specifically with the maple leaf rag, which again is kind of like a proto rag, right? Yep. There's a lot of play between major and minor, which is very interesting in a popular tune or a dance tune, this idea of like playing with danger.
Right.
And so there is an excitement naturally to us when we're coming in and out of major minor.
Totally.
So, I know, again, the maple leaf rag, we have this glorious arpeggio of this big minor chord. Then bum 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 ba da 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 ba da 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 bum, in and out of major minor. Yes. Slowed down is very soulful. Sped up, syncopated, dangerous, and in a way reminds me of klezmer music.
Yes.
Where you have this somber ache in the music, you pull up the tempo, and there is this celebration of the pain we went through. Yeah. Right? So you hear that.
You earn it when you go through the pain to celebrate it, not to make this psychological now.
Well, yeah. No, exactly.
Music is psychological.
I love that. It is earned. Yeah. Exactly. It is earned. And honestly, I feel like that's part of the appeal right now in some hip hop music that's gone mainstream, is that there is that pain in there. It's recognizable. And
it's the antithesis of having to keep the lid on it and be regulated and orderly. Because quite honestly, if people really owned up to how much of their life is with the lid on it and orderly, tiny fraction. And personally for me, I'm always like, I get my stuff out in my music. And that, so using Ragtime as, I hadn't really even thought of that title wise, but that is really smart. I mean, I guess I'd always just thought of it as emblematic of the era, but beyond emblematic of the era, it's the era.
Establishing Ragtime as a national sound is huge, right? And even the name of, how did that name come to be? How do we name that genre of music, Ragtime? It was started off when they would take these normal tunes that were the Sousa marches, that were the straight up Adelaides, and they would say that they would make them raggedy. Right? Okay. So all of a sudden, we're getting these raggedy parts of America showing up over the marches. Okay. So then to name this work, this book, Ragtime. Yeah. Then that kind of like pulls it all together, right? Okay. The themes in this book are what make it the work of art that it is. So one of the biggest themes is that of victims and victimization. The abuse and humiliation that Cole Walker Jr. receives from the members of the Emerald Isle Firehouse is addressed in very stark terms. It's unapologetic. If it doesn't make you uncomfortable to watch that, I don't know who you are. Like I cannot.
There's also something to be said for it was very. Basically Irish American, right?
Correct. Yeah, specifically
because the Irish Americans were the black people prior this, because it was not uncommon to see signs. I married an Irishman, so I know. You'd see signs in business windows saying, they're hiring, but no Irish, please. Like that blows our mind today. But then you go, okay, these people who came from this really extreme kind of situation or prejudice, now we're turning it around. Instead of learning from it and being a bigger person about it,
we become a bully.
Handing it back down and going, what they did to me, I'm going to do to you, which is just a sick exercise in chasing its tail.
Exactly.
So Cole House's whole story just is designed to break your heart. It's like a lot of these pieces I approach psychologically, and as we get into Assassins, I'm going to go there too, because there's just so many layers of kind of the American experience. Again, speaking to why these two pieces fit so well together from our brainstorm. But just all these things of, instead of just stopping yourself and going, I could end this cycle and not pass this on, just making the decision to just keep going for whatever reason. And Ragtime is tragic in that way, but Ragtime I think is also very hopeful in other ways too. I think about when I saw, it was one of my first shows I ever saw in New York, first of all. What struck me about it so much was not only kind of the tragedy of this thread, and what Tata and his little girl go through to get to America as well, and really the tragedy of Mother, who's trapped in this
absolutely
strictured world. But the grand, just the overall scheme of this is all going on simultaneously. And these are people who really, if they would just pop out of their box and their little line and look to one another and really start to relate. Like when Mama and Tata sing Our Children in the second half, I sob. There's so much here. And there's so much, like, if we would just get over stupid surface prejudices that keep us in our lines and really see that we have more in common than keep us apart. I just turned this into a soapbox moment.
Yeah, I know. But, it's hard. It's truly hard not to.
It's sobering. Yeah. It is really when you look at the issues that we were grappling with over 100 years ago, 200 years ago. We're still doing 1776, by the way. So there's I've got a long lens going on right now of kind of historic issues and ways we've dealt with them or not dealt with them, and sort of passed it along and been like, acknowledging, that's a problem we've got.
You guys, we already talked about this.
Or just going, that is a problem. Oh gosh, well, I'm getting older in my life now. We'll leave it to the next generation to figure out. And the thing is, okay, I do understand that there's only so much you can accomplish within your own lifespan, but if you pass it along without, I guess, the notes you took from your life, there's not going to be any change.
Or if your generation is too lazy to go back and look at the history. Like, I mean, I consider myself a history buff, but I know that I'm such a baby, and I know such a fraction of even American history. Yeah. But I feel like I know a whole hell of a lot more than a lot of my peers.
There's this thing that starts to happen as you telescope and as our history gets longer and longer and longer, and making it digestible. Where especially in today's society, it's all about give me your quick pitch, sum it up in a sentence.
Wikipedia that.
Well, although in fairness, Wikipedia has gotten way better over the years, way better. Because there are people who care to do that, who really they care about oral history, because really Wikipedia is no more than the way it used to be carried on in the oral tradition. So it's not to say it's bleak and no hope that nobody's learning anything, but really I think when we start to try to think in macro terms, a lot of the micro out of necessity gets kind of filtered out, but to our detriment at times, because you really do need to understand all the pieces of it. You need to get why the South still has statues to generals from the Civil War. Why we have the Jefferson Memorial, despite the fact that he was a slaveholder. Right.
What are reparations? What does that mean? And what is the impact on a couple generations of simply acknowledging?
And it's
we're like today we're having the conversation of acknowledging privilege, and that still seems such a difficult thing for some Americans to do, is to acknowledge privilege. But you know what? That's exactly what they were trying. Like, some people were trying to get people to do over 100 years ago.
The thing is, I was starting to do my Assassins research, and I was really going back through, because it deals with 9 different life experiences across a large swath of time, going from,
and also jumping back,
jumping back and forth around too, but all being tied together by people who fundamentally believe this thing about the American dream. Now, the Declaration of Independence says we are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness. It's not promising us happiness, but the ability to do so. And actually, within Assassins, one of the
we got to do the work.
One of the smartest lyrics in Assassins. Everybody's got the right to be happy. And that fundamentally shows kind of a misread of what we kind of believe is our American dream. We aren't promised happiness, and when we feel like we're not getting that piece of the pie, that American dream as we've defined it, how we deal with that or don't deal with that. How do we get people to pay attention to us when we are so marginalized in society, or when we, even if we're not, socioeconomically marginalized, if we feel it in here. When Assassins premiered off Broadway in 1990, we were in the middle of the Gulf War. nobody, we were really all very pro-America at
Yeah,
that
for
moment.
sure, yeah.
Nobody really wanted to look at these malcontents who had done these horrible things. So the original production of Assassins, first of all, it never came to Broadway. It took until 2004 to get a Broadway production of it. It only ran 73 performances at Playwrights Horizons. And it got the kind of virulent opposite. There were people who were really into it from the standpoint of, oh God, this is heavy and this is really important exploration. And then there were people who were like, you're glorifying murdering the executive of the country.
Listen, I gotta tell you, going into this, your job, your mission, so if you choose to accept it, is to convince me to like Assassins.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Because I've seen it, and I've seen it with my friends in it, and it sits with so much unease with me.
What strikes you? Like, what's a big thing that comes up in your
I'm
face
not.
about?
I mean, I consider myself fairly liberal-minded and open-minded. I consider Abraham Lincoln a personal hero.
Okay.
And I don't like the guy that killed him.
Booth.
You know what I mean?
Okay. You know, actually, John Wilkes Booth was pretty darn well off at the time he chose to take it. You know, there's this false thing that's been pushed forward, I think maybe just to try to good guy, bad guy, Lincoln's assassination, saying that, well, Booth was past it in his career. He was missing cues. He was forgetting lines. He wasn't making the money he used to. Oh, no. Booth was doing well. He was making $20,000 a year. He was doing well. He was an in-demand actor, but he felt that his country, as he saw it, was being ridden by a tyrant by the name of Abraham Lincoln, who was overthrowing, and honestly, Lincoln did really stretch the strength of the executive from the standpoint of what's enumerated in the Constitution.
Whoa, Jefferson!
I know, I'm going there, but you know, it's interesting because Jefferson, before Lincoln, Jefferson was the president who had sort of pushed and with the executive power, and he was a strict constitutionalist. He was like, if it's not written in black and white, that's not my power, I can't do it. Like to the detriment, like when the Lewis and Clark expedition came back, he said, no, we can't have a museum. So all of those pieces were lost. He's like, it's not in the Constitution, we have to talk to the people, there has to be an amendment. Like, he was very, if it's not in there, I'm not doing it. Yet, when France was like, oh, look at all this land that we call it Louisiana, you want this? Jefferson need to jump on that because Bonaparte was starting to have seller's remorse. So if he hadn't jumped on it when he did, it would have been gone and we wouldn't have doubled the size of our country. So he went, all right, I'm taking this and we'll figure it out later. Lincoln did a lot of that with what was going on. Now, Lincoln was... I'm not going to turn this into a Lincoln bashing situation because...
Please don't.
No, he's the reason. Honestly, Lincoln saw a much larger picture.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
But what he had to do to get there was to sort of stretch the fabric of what the executive can do.
Right, but somebody needed to.
He had to suspend habeas corpus. There were over, I think it was like 30,000, hundreds of thousands of prisoners of war who had no benefit of trial by jury. He also suspended some of the voting rights in border states when it came to the secession vote. Like, he did things that when you have a guy like Booth who grew up in the South, who really, to him, slavery was their way of life. That was their economy, to make it black and white. This is how my life is. You're doing all these things to us to ruin our way of life, and so we'll be subordinate to you in the North.
I fully know the argument. I don't like the murderer, watching the murderer. I don't want to. It's like, I don't want to be in the courtroom. I just don't.
Yeah. It feels a little bit, I guess the word I'm going to wind up using here is pornographic a little bit to you? Is that kind of how you're going with it? That I don't need to see this? I know what happened?
Here's the thing. I would never say I don't think it should exist. I would never say I don't want my company doing it. I would never say to a friend, don't do it. Here's probably the most simple reason, my real truth. It just makes me depressed. You know what I'm saying?
Let me roll back into the history of Assassins a little bit to start from. Because it's interesting how
Convince me.
It's interesting how
I'm
it came
here to be
about.
convinced.
Well, I'm thinking really where the fundamental difference is, because there are people, and I totally appreciate it, who are like, they're like, I don't want to, sit there like you were just talking about and marinate in what feels like really sort of icky, dark stuff about...
Yeah. And especially now, it's
yeah.
like I go to the theater to A, see my friends, B, escape.
Okay. Yeah,
and I can't, like, I spend a lot of time with dark theater. You know, I put myself in dark roles.
Plays or musicals?
Both.
Okay, because that's one of the things that people brought up
musical
about
comedy,
making it. It actually started off. Sondheim and book writer John Weidman had collaborated in the past. This is an understatement, but they were seeing a play reading analyzing assassination.
Yeah,
as not just in America.
Yeah,
the history.
Got
of
it. Okay,
from Brutus and Caesar to Sirhan. And they had this great grand idea. So that's a lot of
yeah, I like that.
That's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
And again, this started as a straight play idea. And
although I like that idea of starting from Brutus.
Yeah, it would be a very different show. First of all. Honestly, they took one look at it and went, "That's a lot of material to cover." Yeah. And
let's narrow it down to our piece of heaven.
In honing your message and your story and making it most relevant to the audience you're going to be presenting it to in America, you bring it into what's happened within our countries.
Yeah.
In comparison to the rest of the world, small lifespan. Actually, Weidman was the one that Lin-Manuel Miranda talked to when he was working on Hamilton. Yeah, he's like, Lin-Manuel Miranda was like, I've done so much research. There's so much in Hamilton's life. How is this a musical? What do I do? And Weidman was like, you cut out the part that isn't a musical, honestly, and you find the pieces that are the most compelling. And as they went through the stories of each of these historical figures, each of these assassins, finding the things that lined up and having them literally talk to each other. Like Booth and Oswald's conversation right at the end of the show, the capstone. Yeah, I had chills for days. I was like, oh God, how is it we're looking at a guy from the 1860s and 1960, and I'm like, we're looking at over 100 years, and it's all they've got the same shit. It doesn't offer you answers, but it's a study in, I guess, awareness, because until you can really see the threads that keep just recurring for whatever reason in the human condition, you can't change them. In talking about the breakdown of that American dream for people and across the eras, what Sondheim and Weidman sort of really started to focus on was they create. First of all, it's a really creative sort of way of bringing all these people together.
It
in
is
sort
certainly
of underworld, carnival type environment where everybody is kind of given their place to air their issues and see that they're not alone. Now they're the world's most broken fraternity in a lot of ways, but there's a it doesn't offer any solutions. I think that's what's kind of kills you a little bit about it.
Maybe that's what it is for me.
Yeah. A big change that the revival made that was deeply impactful for me, and I don't think, because Assassins as it was presented in 1990 was not the Assassins that you got. Didn't know that. They took one big casting change, makes a huge difference.
Go on.
In the original, you've got your basics. You got your 9 assassins, and you got the balladeer. Yeah. And you've got the proprietor. And then you've got the incidental ensemble who plays like the presidents and this and that.
Right.
The balladeer in the original production he exists to kind of be the audience's kind of foothold and tell the story. The balladeer is emblematic of the American dream on some level. He's that folk singer who's everything's going to be good again.
Neutral?
He's sort of kind
of
Bob
Dylan.
He's kind of a little bit of a storyteller, Dylan-esque from the folk song tradition of telling the story. But you kind of look to him to be like, oh, he's going to make it okay because he's telling us it's all right, and his lyrics are going to all sum it up, and this is going to be, listen to the story, listen to the story, listen to the songs. Every now and then the country goes a little wrong, hurts a while, but soon the country's back where it belongs. He is this figure of comfort. And in the revival, he was played by Neil Patrick Harris. How much more all-American boy can you get?
Yes.
And you kind of get used to seeing him to be like, okay, this got really dark, but oh, look, there you are. I love you.
Yeah.
And so we're okay now. In the revival, the song Another National Anthem is really like, it is their slogan, their march. This is like, God, everything's gone hell in America. And the balladeer keeps popping in going, but it's okay. Like, we're going to be all right. And that's why they eventually chase him off the stage. They're like, we're done with you and we're taking over the stage now. The way they stage it, he's chased off, but they've surrounded him.
Yeah.
And as he's behind them, you're like, what's going on? And they split, and he's revealed as Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right, yeah.
And that moment...
So that wasn't in the original.
No, it was not a double
He was
cast.
a complete
He was a
neutral
completely
character.
different... Yeah, and Oswald was another character. It was the actor who showed up at the 11 o'clock moment, and it was only at rehearsal for last week. You know, it's that character. But... combining that and taking that piece of comfort for you and going, because he's been telling their stories all along.
One of us.
Well, but he's been telling their stories all along, and then you think about it and going, kind of absorbing their stories all along as you go too.
For sure, yeah.
And you know, it really, to me, it's sort of it like hit me in this place of going, God, it could be anybody.
Yeah.
That
I know. That's why I'm like.
That's why it unsettles you. But why
sure.
it makes me stop. It doesn't make me so much paranoid as want to look into that psychology and go, how do you stop that? How can you?
I know.
You know,
But
and
it's not there.
It's
that's
heavy.
That's the conversation.
Yeah, and the book doesn't give you
Applebee's
answers
afterward.
to that. Yeah,
I know.
And it was really, honestly, Assassins was my first experience with a musical that didn't offer you easy answers,
Yeah.
and that might be why I've got a spot in my heart for it.
Yeah.
And that also being said, that I completely understand why people aren't crazy about it. I mean, literally from the downbeat at the beginning of the show, you know something's going to be happening. We're presented "Hail to the Chief" in 3/4 time.
Yeah.
Like, it's wrong.
Well, I mean,
how is
coming
this
to
a
show
waltz?
called Assassins? So.
Yeah, well, yes. Actually, Assassins, before we had Urinetown, was sort of the emblematic show of, but the title's awful.
Yeah.
How you get
yeah.
butts in the seats.
Yeah.
It is a thinker's piece of theater,
Yeah.
most assuredly. And it has also always had the misfortune to kind of show up in big productions when the misfortune, or maybe just this is one of those weird things of life. The original production happened in the middle of the Gulf War.
Yeah.
The revival was originally supposed to be 2001, September of 2001.
Oh my.
And they immediately went, okay, we can't do this right now.
Right.
And it came back, they finally came around to it 3 years later when I guess they thought we'd healed enough or whatever. I mean, honestly,
years?
Yeah, 2004. I went with my college group to see it. I got to see that production with the entire original listed cast, with Michael Severus and with James Barber and Neil Patrick Harris and at Studio 54. So talk about an environmental sort of place too. It really, where you're unsettled and going, I don't want to live here. I was like, oh God, it's opened up a lot of, I had all the feels and all the thoughts to use how the kids talk these days.
Is that how they talk?
I don't know. I've been told. I may have been misinformed. It's a myth. I was myth taken.
Oh.
Boom. Joss Whedon line. I go back to how I first discovered Assassins, and I think about the kind of musical theater that I was into at the time. And I really was sort of, you know, my dad loved a lot of with the happy, upbeat ending, kind of Rodgers and Hammerstein. You know, everything's tied off with a bow. You know, we had conflict and it's resolved.
Right.
And now we can feel good that we've all learned something, and we have songs that we're coming away humming and loving, and that's, you know, wasn't that a beautiful night of theater? There's such a value, to me anyway, in breaking out of that kind of everything's happy and it's wrapped up, because in a way those kind of shows are feeding into what these assassins were fed is how life goes.
Fine. And I'm happy that exists. All I'm saying is I got it.
Okay.
I got Assassins. It is not on my bucket list to be in or direct, but when you're in it, I will come see you and I will sit on the first row, and when you guys point guns, I'll be like, give it to me.
And I think this is just gonna be one of those things that stylistically we differ on.
Oh yeah, and I would never like.
Well, you did utter the challenge to me to be like, make me like Assassin.
Convince me, because I don't, but I don't care if you do.
But it was
Now, did you see the revival or the original?
Original.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I saw the original. And actually, I saw Les Mis around the same time, but Ragtime was one of the first ones where I'm sitting in the audience and going, oh God, theater. Like, from the standpoint of this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah,
kind
that's
of thing.
cool.
And then it's interesting that not even... I think I saw it in 99. So like 5 years later, I'm seeing Assassins and having the same sort of feeling in the theater, but from a vastly different standpoint.
Okay, we're gonna end with a mystery. It's only a mystery because I don't know the answer. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, so 2016, they do this developmental concert of the musical on Ellis Island, and an immersive full production was planned for 2017. And there was a whole website called www.ragtimeonellis.com. It's still there, it's still live, and it's still talking about the production that's going up in 2017. But it's 2018.
Jesus,
So what happened?
Ragtime has got such behind-the-scenes issues.
Ragtime,
man.
get your stuff together.
Maybe it's happening now. Maybe we're immersed and we're not aware of it. It's like Black Mirror.
We are in it. Everyone's watching us right now. Okay, so that's my mystery. If anybody has any information on what's happening with Ragtime on Ellis, because ragtimeonellis.com has no information.
It's probably something boring like contractual and money.
I know.
It's always money. But I think it's more interesting if we go with like the idea that they've actually launched it and we're just not aware of it yet.
You have to be part of a secret society to get to it. So how very strange, but true, dear. Wow, that is super strange. How long can you hold it? Oh God, no! I'm getting totally creeped out.
Hi.